Game over. You just lost everything.
My name is Nick Barrow, and I've always prided myself on being the kind of guy who notices things. 17 years as an engineer before I switched to home renovation taught me that the devil's in the details. A crooked beam here, a loose wire there, ignore the small stuff, and everything comes crashing down. I should have applied that philosophy to my marriage sooner. It was a Tuesday night in October when everything started unraveling. Sierra, my wife of 15 years, had rushed out for another emergency work meeting at 7:30, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume and half-eaten takeout. Her gym bag sat by the front door like a guilty conscience, forgotten in her haste. "Dad, Mom's acting weird again," Alex said, appearing in the kitchen doorway. My 17-year-old daughter had inherited my talent for observation, though she was far more diplomatic about it than her old man. "Define weird," I said, loading dishes into the dishwasher with mechanical precision. "She's been getting calls at weird hours. And yesterday I saw her delete a bunch of texts before answering." Alex grabbed an apple from the counter, studying me with those sharp green eyes that reminded me so much of my own mother. "You've noticed too, haven't you?" I had. Sierra's work emergencies always seemed to coincide with gym nights and wine club meetings. She'd started dressing differently, younger, tighter clothes that she claimed were for confidence at the office. Her phone had become surgically attached to her hand, and she guarded it like state secrets. But it was the gym bag that finally broke my willful ignorance. After Alex went upstairs to finish homework, I found myself staring at that black Nike duffel. Sierra never forgot anything work-related. She was the type who color-coded her calendar and set 3 alarms for important meetings. Forgetting her gym bag was like forgetting to breathe. Inside, beneath her yoga mat and water bottle, I found a crumpled men's t-shirt that definitely wasn't mine. Size large, expensive brand, still carrying the faint scent of cologne I didn't recognize. Underneath that was a pair of her underwear, the good stuff, black lace that she certainly hadn't been wearing for me lately. My hands shook as I held the evidence. 15 years of marriage, and it comes down to finding another man's shirt in your wife's gym bag like some cliché from a bad movie. I was still standing there, shirt in hand, when headlights swept across the living room window. But it wasn't Sierra's silver Lexus pulling into our driveway. It was a white Tesla Model 3 that I recognized from Sierra's office Christmas party. Eli Hodge stepped out, all 6'2" of Jim's sculpted arrogance, carrying a laptop bag and wearing the kind of confident smirk that made me want to rearrange his perfectly straight teeth. He was Sierra's subordinate at the PR firm, a 38-year-old pretty boy who treated every conversation like a networking opportunity. The doorbell rang twice before I answered, the men's t-shirt now stuffed in my back pocket like evidence at a crime scene. "Nick, hey man," Eli said, flashing that practiced smile. "Sierra forgot her laptop. Big presentation tomorrow, you know how it is." I stepped aside to let him in, noting how his eyes immediately scanned the room like he was cataloging our furniture for future reference. "Funny thing about that laptop," I said, closing the door behind him. "She took it with her when she left for her meeting." Eli's smile flickered for just a moment. "Oh, well, maybe it was her backup laptop. You know how she is about being prepared?" "I do know how she is." I gestured toward the couch. "Have a seat. Can I get you something to drink? Coffee, beer, truth serum?" He laughed, but it sounded forced. "Just water's fine." I disappeared into the kitchen, taking my time with the water while my mind raced. Through the pass-through window, I watched Eli fidget with his phone, typing rapidly, probably warning Sierra that her husband was asking uncomfortable questions. "So," I said, returning with a glass of ice water, "how long have you and Sierra been working together on this special project?" "Special project?" Eli took a sip, and I noticed his hand trembling slightly. "The one that requires so many evening meetings and weekend conferences, and that matching gym schedule you two seem to have developed." The color drained from his face. "Nick, I think there might be some misunderstanding." "Show me your hands," I said quietly. "What? Your hands. Show them to me." Eli set down the water glass and slowly opened both palms. In his right hand was a small piece of black lace, the matching bra to the underwear I'd found in Sierra's gym bag. We stared at each other for a long moment, the evidence literally in his palm. I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest, replacing the hurt and confusion with crystal-clear purpose. "It's not what you think," Eli stammered, quickly closing his fist around the lace. "Sierra and I were just—" "Dad?" Alex's voice cut through the tension as she appeared at the top of the stairs. Is everything okay down there? Everything's fine, sweetheart, I called back, never taking my eyes off Eli. Mr. Hodge was just leaving. But Alex came down the stairs anyway, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. She looked between us, taking in Eli's panicked expression and my barely controlled rage with the intuition that teenagers seem to possess in abundance. Actually, Dad, she said, her voice trembling slightly, I need to tell you something. About Mom. Eli stood abruptly, the lace still clutched in his fist. I should go. Tell Sierra I'll call her tomorrow. He moved toward the door, but I stepped into his path. We were roughly the same height, but I had 20 pounds of muscle on him from years of construction work. Not so fast, I said. I think we need to have a longer conversation about your work relationship with my wife. Dad, Alex said more urgently. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. Mom's been lying to both of us. The next morning, I woke up with the grim determination of a man who'd spent the night planning war. Alex had told me everything. Months of suspicious phone calls, secret meetings, and lies that she'd been too afraid to report because she didn't want to hurt me. My 17-year-old daughter had been carrying the burden of her mother's betrayal alone, trying to protect me from a truth I'd been too willfully blind to see. Sierra had come home around midnight, full of apologies about her work crisis and explanations about why Eli had needed to stop by. I'd listened to every lie with a poker face that would have made my old engineering buddies proud, filing away each deception for future use. Now, at 6:30 a.m., I was sitting in my truck outside Gold's Gym, watching Eli's Tesla in the parking lot. My friend Joe Martinez, the night manager, had agreed to help me check the security footage from the past few weeks. Joe and I went back to high school, and he'd never liked Sierra much anyway. This is some messed up stuff, Nick, Joe said, fast-forwarding through hours of gym footage on his office computer. You sure you want to see this? I'm sure. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., 3 nights ago. Sierra and Eli appeared on screen entering the gym through the back entrance that Joe had given them access to. They went straight to the sauna area, and even though the camera angle was limited, it was clear they weren't there for a late-night workout. There's more, Joe said grimly. From last week, more footage, same pattern. Sierra and Eli using the gym as their private love nest, completely unaware that every moment was being recorded in high definition. How long? I asked. Based on what I've seen, at least 3 months, maybe longer. 3 months. While I'd been working 60-hour weeks to save money for Alex's college fund, my wife had been screwing her subordinate in a gym sauna. I need copies of these, I said. Already burned them to a disk, Joe replied, sliding a DVD across the desk. And Nick? Whatever you're planning, count me in. That woman never deserved you. My next stop was Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar downtown where the bartender, Rita, knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. Rita had been serving drinks in this town for 20 years, and her memory for gossip was encyclopedic. Nick Barrow, she said as I slid onto a bar stool. Little early for you, isn't it? Just coffee today, and maybe some information. Rita poured me a cup of coffee that could strip paint and leaned against the bar. What kind of information? The kind about my wife and Eli Hodge. Her expression shifted from casual interest to genuine concern. Oh, honey, you found out. So you knew? Sweetheart, half the town knows. Sierra's not as discreet as she thinks she is. Rita glanced around the empty bar, then leaned closer. Last week she was in here with that friend of hers, Margot something. Real estate agent, talks too much. Anyway, Sierra was bragging about how she had you wrapped around her finger, how you'd never suspect anything because you were too busy working. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. What else did she say? That Eli was just for fun, but she was looking for someone with more money. Mentioned some rich guy who owns that big house on Maple Street, Tabitha's place. Said she was working her way up to bigger and better things. Tabitha Morrison. I knew her by reputation. A social media influencer who'd married money twice and inherited a mansion from her second husband. She threw parties that the local wannabe elite attended, desperate to climb the social ladder. Rita, I said, pulling out my wallet. If anyone asks, we never had this conversation. What conversation? She replied with a wink. I spent the rest of the day doing reconnaissance, a skill I'd picked up during my brief stint in the Army Reserve. Tabitha's mansion sat on 3 acres of manicured lawn with plenty of privacy for clandestine meetings. The house had a smart home system, I could see the cameras and sensors from the street, which meant it was probably vulnerable to the right kind of technical interference. That evening, Sierra came home with Chinese takeout and a guilty smile. "Thought we could have a nice dinner together," she said, unpacking containers of kung pao chicken and lo mein. "I feel like we haven't been connecting lately." "Connecting," I repeated, watching her move around the kitchen with practiced domesticity. "That's an interesting choice of words." She looked up sharply, but I kept my expression neutral. "Is something wrong? Should something be wrong? You're acting strange, Nick, kind of paranoid." There it was, the gaslighting starting already. Make the betrayed spouse question their own perceptions, their own sanity. It was straight out of the cheater's playbook. "Just tired," I said. "Work's been stressful." Alex joined us for dinner, and I watched Sierra perform the role of loving mother and wife with Oscar-worthy skill. She asked about Alex's classes, complimented the new highlights in her hair, and even suggested a mother-daughter shopping trip for the weekend. "Actually," Alex said carefully, "I was hoping to spend Saturday with Dad, help him with that kitchen renovation he's been working on." Sierra's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Sweetie, you spend so much time with your father already. We should have some girl time." "I like spending time with Dad," Alex replied, her voice carrying just a hint of challenge. "He listens to me." After dinner, Sierra retreated to her home office to catch up on work, which I knew meant texting Eli and whoever else was in her rotation. Alex helped me load the dishwasher, and we worked in comfortable silence until Sierra was out of earshot. "What are you going to do?" Alex asked quietly. "I'm going to make sure she gets exactly what she deserves," I replied. "But first, I need to know everything. Every lie, every suspicious phone call, every time she's made you cover for her." Alex nodded grimly. "It's going to be a long list." "Good," I said, drying my hands on a dish towel. "I've got all night." Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made me nostalgic for simpler times. Sierra had left early for her shopping trip with Margot, which Alex and I both knew was code for another rendezvous with Eli. What Sierra didn't know was that Alex had volunteered to help me install a security system in our house, cameras that would record everything, including her lies. "The motion sensor goes here," Alex said, positioning a tiny device behind a picture frame in the living room. "And the audio pickup should catch conversations from the kitchen and front door." My daughter had inherited more than just my observational skills. She had a natural talent for technology that put my engineering background to shame. While I'd been focused on building things, she'd been learning how to monitor and record them. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, watching her calibrate the equipment with professional precision. "Once we start down this path, there's no going back." "Dad, she's been lying to us for months. She made me keep her secrets, made me feel guilty for knowing the truth." Alex's jaw tightened with determination that reminded me of myself at that age. She doesn't get to play the victim when she's been playing us both for fools. By noon, we had the entire house wired for sound and video. Everything fed to a secure cloud server that Alex had set up using skills she'd learned in her computer science classes. Sierra would never suspect that her own daughter had turned our home into a surveillance center. "Phase 1 complete," Alex announced, packing away the leftover equipment. "What's Phase 2? "Phase 2 is where things get interesting," I said, pulling out my phone. "I'm going to give your mother exactly what she wants. Complete freedom to hang herself with her own rope." I sent Sierra a text. "Emergency call from the Henderson job site. Pipe burst, flooding the basement. Going to be there all day, maybe into the evening. Don't wait up." Her response came back within minutes. "Oh no, hope it's not too bad. I'll probably stay at Margot's tonight, help her with some real estate stuff. Love you." "Love you too," I typed back, each letter feeling like a small betrayal of everything I'd once believed about our marriage. Alex read the exchange over my shoulder. She doesn't even try to make it believable anymore. "That's going to be her downfall," I said. Overconfidence. At 3 p.m., I parked my truck at the end of Maple Street, with a clear view of Tabitha's mansion. I'd borrowed Joe's binoculars and settled in for what I expected to be a long surveillance session. I didn't have to wait long. Sierra's Lexus pulled into the circular driveway at 3:20, followed 5 minutes later by Eli's Tesla. They both parked behind the house, trying to stay out of sight from the street, but they hadn't counted on someone watching from the tree line. Through the binoculars, I could see them entering through the back door, laughing and touching each other with the casual intimacy of people who'd been doing this for months. Eli carried a bottle of wine, expensive stuff judging by the shape of the bottle, and Sierra had changed into a dress that I'd never seen before. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex. Cameras are active. Mom just called the house looking for you. I told her you were still at the job site. I typed back, good, stay ready. At 4:15, Tabitha's smart home system experienced what would later be described as a technical malfunction. The security alarm began blaring at full volume, triggered by what appeared to be a motion sensor glitch. Through the binoculars, I watched Sierra and Eli scramble to get dressed as the alarm continued its ear-splitting wail. Eli made it to his car first, backing out of the driveway so fast he clipped the ornate mailbox at the end of the drive. I was waiting for him at the street, my truck blocking his exit route. He rolled down his window, face flushed with panic and guilt. Nick, what are you doing here? Funny story, I said, getting out of my truck and walking over to his driver's side door. I was in the neighborhood, heard the alarm, thought I'd check if anyone needed help. Everything's fine, he stammered. Just a false alarm. Is it? I reached through his open window and grabbed him by the front of his shirt, pulling him halfway out of the car. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been screwing my wife in someone else's house. Eli's eyes went wide with terror. Nick, please, let me explain. I slapped him across the face, hard enough to leave a red handprint on his cheek. Touch my wife again, and you'll be scraping your teeth out of your seat cushions. Are we clear? Yes, he whispered. I can't hear you. Yes, we're clear. I released his shirt and stepped back. Eli revved the engine and sped off, his damaged bumper scraping against the broken mailbox as he fled. Sierra appeared at the end of the driveway, just as Eli's taillights disappeared around the corner. She was fully dressed but disheveled, her hair mussed and her lipstick smeared. When she saw me standing there, her face went through a fascinating series of expressions: shock, fear, anger, and finally, calculated innocence. Nick, what are you doing here? I heard the alarm, I said casually. Thought someone might need help. Isn't that what good neighbors do? Tabitha asked me to check on the house while she's out of town. The alarm system has been acting up. Uh-huh. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken of Eli's car damage. Looks like someone had an accident with the mailbox. You know anything about that? Her composure cracked slightly. No, that must have happened earlier. Must have, I agreed. Well, since everything's under control here, I should get back to work. That pipe isn't going to fix itself. I drove away, leaving Sierra standing in Tabitha's driveway, probably wondering how much I'd seen and how much I knew. The answer was everything, but I wasn't ready to play that card yet. Back home, Alex was waiting with a laptop full of recorded conversations and a grim smile. Mom called 3 more times while you were gone. She's panicking. Good, I said. Let her panic. People make mistakes when they're scared. Dad, Alex said quietly, are you sure you want to do this? Destroy her life, I mean? I thought about 15 years of marriage, of the woman I'd loved and trusted, of the lies and betrayals that had been happening right under my nose. I thought about my daughter, forced to keep her mother's secrets, and about all the ways Sierra had manipulated both of us. She destroyed her own life, I said finally. I'm just making sure everyone else knows about it. Monday morning brought the first real test of my new strategy. Sierra came down to breakfast, looking like she hadn't slept. Her usual morning routine of coffee and gossip shows replaced by nervous glances at her phone and barely touched toast. How was your evening with Margot? I asked, buttering my toast with deliberate casualness. Fine, she said quickly. We looked at some properties, talked about market trends, boring real estate stuff. I took a bite of toast, chewing slowly. Funny thing, though. I ran into Dave Peterson at the hardware store yesterday. You remember Dave, Margot's ex-husband? He mentioned that Margot spent Saturday night at her sister's place in Portland. Has been staying there all weekend, apparently. Sierra's coffee cup rattled against the saucer as she set it down. Oh, well, maybe I got confused about which night. Mom, Alex interrupted, appearing in the kitchen doorway with her backpack. Your phone's been buzzing upstairs. Sounds like someone's really trying to reach you. Sierra practically sprinted up the stairs, leaving Alex and me alone in the kitchen. My daughter raised an eyebrow in the universal teenage expression for told you so. Phase 3? She asked. Phase 3, I confirmed. That afternoon, I made a visit to Sierra's office building. Meridian Public Relations occupied 3 floors of a glass tower downtown, and I knew the layout from the handful of company parties I'd attended over the years. More importantly, I knew that Eli's cubicle was positioned perfectly for maximum visibility from the break room. I'd brought lunch for Sierra, her favorite sandwich from the deli near our house, along with a small bouquet of flowers and a handwritten note that read, "Just because, love, your devoted husband." The receptionist, a young woman named Kelly, who'd always been friendly at company events, smiled when she saw me. "Mr. Barrow, how sweet of you to bring lunch for Sierra." "I like to surprise her," I said, making sure my voice carried to the nearby cubicles. 15 years of marriage, and I still try to be romantic. You know how it is. Several heads turned in our direction, including Eli's. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, his face pale and his hands shaking as he pretended to work at his computer. "She's in a meeting right now," Kelly said, "but I can make sure she gets this." "Actually, could you do me a favor? Could you announce it over the intercom? I want everyone to know how much I love my wife." Kelly's smile widened. "That's so sweet, of course." Her voice echoed through the office. "Sierra Barrow, please come to reception. Your husband is here with a surprise." I watched Eli's face go from pale to green as Sierra emerged from the conference room, her professional smile faltering when she saw me standing there with flowers and food. "Nick, what are you doing here?" "Bringing lunch to the most beautiful woman in the office," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I know how hard you've been working lately, all those late nights and weekend projects. Thought you deserved something special." I kissed her cheek, noting how she stiffened at my touch. "You're so good to me," she said through gritted teeth. "Anything for my wife," I replied, then turned to address the small crowd that had gathered. "You're all lucky to work with such a dedicated woman. Sierra puts in more hours than anyone I know. Sometimes I wonder if she even has time for a social life outside this place." The irony wasn't lost on anyone who knew about Sierra and Eli's relationship, which, based on the uncomfortable glances being exchanged, was most of the office. "Well," Sierra said, her voice strained, "I should get back to work." "Of course. Don't let me keep you from your projects." I handed her the flowers and lunch bag, then leaned in to whisper in her ear, "We need to talk when you get home." I left her standing there, surrounded by coworkers and holding flowers like evidence of her own guilt. That evening, Sierra came home 2 hours later than usual, probably strategizing with Eli about damage control. I was waiting in the living room, reading a book and looking perfectly relaxed. "We need to talk," she said, echoing my earlier words. "Do we?" I looked up from my book. Appropriately enough, it was a thriller about marital deception. "What about?" "About your behavior today, showing up at my office unannounced, making a scene." "I brought you lunch," I interrupted. "Since when is that making a scene?" "You know what I mean. You're acting strange, paranoid. People are starting to notice." There it was again, the gaslighting, the attempt to make me question my own perceptions. But this time, I was ready for it. "Paranoid about what?" I asked calmly. "About nothing. That's the point. You're seeing problems where there aren't any." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a USB drive, setting it on the coffee table between us. "What's on here, Sierra?" She stared at the drive like it was a snake. "I don't know. What is it?" "Security footage from Gold's Gym. From the past 3 months. Want to watch it together?" The color drained from her face. "Nick. Or we could listen to some audio recordings I've been collecting. Conversations between you and Eli, you and Margot, you and various other people discussing your extracurricular activities." She sank into the chair across from me, her hands shaking. "How long have you known?" "Long enough," I said. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" "I can explain." "No," I said firmly. "You can't. There's no explanation for months of lies, for using our daughter as a cover story, for screwing around with your subordinate in gym saunas and other people's houses." Sierra's mask finally slipped completely, revealing the calculating woman underneath. "So what do you want? A divorce? Half of everything?" "I want you to understand something," I said, leaning forward. "This isn't about money or property or even the divorce. This is about consequences. For 15 years, you've lied to me, manipulated me, made me feel like I was the problem in our marriage. You've involved our daughter in your deceptions and taught her that betrayal is acceptable as long as you don't get caught. I never meant for Alex to get involved, but she did get involved. She's been carrying your secrets for months, feeling guilty about protecting me from the truth. You turned our child into an accomplice to your betrayal." Sierra was crying now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no desire to comfort her. The woman I'd loved for 15 years had been a fiction, a role she'd played while planning her exit strategy. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. I stood up, pocketing the USB drive. "I want you to pack a bag and stay somewhere else tonight. Tomorrow, we start the process of ending this marriage." "But Sierra," I paused at the doorway, "this is just the beginning. You wanted to play games? Let's play games." I left her sitting there in the ruins of her carefully constructed lies, crying for a marriage she'd already destroyed. The next few weeks were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I'd learned a lot about strategy during my Army Reserve days, and even more about patience during my engineering career. Sierra had spent months planning her betrayal. I was going to spend however long it took to ensure her public downfall. The first domino fell at the Riverside Country Club's annual charity auction. Sierra had been looking forward to this event for months. It was her chance to network with the town's social elite and show off the new dress she'd bought with money from our joint account. What she didn't know was that I'd made some preparations of my own. I arrived at the event alone, wearing my best suit and carrying a briefcase that contained the fruits of my recent investigative work. Sierra was already there, working the room with Margot and several other social climbers, playing the role of the devoted wife whose husband was too busy with work to attend social functions. Nick. Tabitha Morrison approached me with a champagne flute in one hand and her phone in the other, probably live streaming the event for her social media followers. "I didn't expect to see you here. Sierra said you were working tonight." "Change of plans," I said smoothly. "I wouldn't miss seeing my wife in action for anything." Tabitha's smile flickered slightly. She knew something was off, but couldn't quite put her finger on it. "Well, you should bid on the silent auction items. There are some lovely pieces this year." "Actually, I'm more interested in the live auction," I replied. "I understand they're auctioning off some very revealing items tonight." The live auction began at 8 p.m., with the usual parade of vacation packages, artwork, and donated services. I waited patiently through the first dozen lots, watching Sierra bid aggressively on a spa weekend that she'd probably planned to share with Eli. When Lot 13 came up, a wine tasting experience at a local vineyard, I raised my hand. "We have an opening bid of $200, the auctioneer announced. Sierra turned in her seat, surprised to see me participating. I gave her a friendly wave and bid again when someone else tried to outbid me. $500, I called out. "Nick," Sierra hissed. "What are you doing?" "Supporting charity," I replied innocently. "Isn't that why we're here?" I won the wine tasting for $800, then immediately stood up to address the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom, "I'd like to dedicate this auction win to my wife Sierra and her co-worker Eli Hodge, who have been working so hard together lately. In fact, they've been putting in so many extra hours that I thought they deserved some recognition." I opened my briefcase and pulled out a tablet, connecting it to the room's projection system with a cable I'd brought for exactly this purpose. I've put together a little slideshow of their collaborative efforts. The first image appeared on the large screen at the front of the room. Sierra and Eli entering the gym through the back entrance, timestamp clearly visible. The crowd murmured with confusion, then understanding, then shock as more photos appeared in sequence. Sierra shot to her feet. "Nick, stop this!" "But we're just getting to the good part," I said, advancing to the next slide. "This is from last Tuesday, when you told me you were working late on the Morrison account." The photo showed Sierra and Eli in a passionate embrace in the gym's parking lot. The crowd's murmur turned into gasps and whispered conversations. "And this," I continued, "is from Saturday afternoon, when you were supposedly helping Margot with real estate research." The final photo showed Sierra and Eli entering Tabitha's mansion through the back door, wine bottle in hand. I turned to look at Tabitha, whose face had gone white with rage. "You used my house?" she shrieked at Sierra. "My house for your sordid affair?" The ballroom erupted into chaos. Sierra was crying, Eli was nowhere to be seen, and Margot was trying to disappear into the crowd. I calmly packed up my tablet and closed my briefcase. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced over the noise, "I apologize for the interruption. Please continue supporting this worthy cause. As for me, I have a divorce to file." I walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind the wreckage of Sierra's social standing and reputation. Behind me, I could hear Tabitha screaming at Sierra about property damage and betrayal of trust, while other voices joined in with their own accusations and gossip. The story spread through town like wildfire. By the next morning, Sierra's affair was the talk of every coffee shop, gym, and office building in the area. Her boss called an emergency meeting to discuss the workplace conduct issues that had come to light, and Eli was quietly transferred to the company's satellite office in another state. But I wasn't done yet. The following week, I attended Sierra's yoga class, something I'd never done before, claiming I wanted to work on our marriage through shared activities. The instructor, a granola-crunching woman named Rainbow, who took herself very seriously, welcomed me with enthusiasm. "It's so wonderful when couples practice together," she gushed. "Yoga creates such beautiful intimacy." "That's what I'm hoping for," I said, unrolling my mat next to Sierra's. "I want to understand all of my wife's positions." Sierra shot me a warning look, but I maintained my innocent expression throughout the class. During the partner poses, I made sure to comment loudly on Sierra's flexibility and experience with different positions, causing several other participants to giggle and exchange knowing looks. After class, Rainbow approached us with concern. "Sierra, I hope everything is okay at home. There seems to be some tension." "Everything's fine," Sierra said through gritted teeth. "Actually," I said, "we're going through a bit of a rough patch. Sierra's been exploring her options, if you know what I mean. Trying new things, meeting new people, expanding her horizons." Rainbow's face scrunched with confusion and discomfort. "Well, yoga can certainly help with personal growth." "Oh, she's definitely been growing," I agreed, in ways I never imagined. By the time we left the yoga studio, Sierra was practically vibrating with rage. "What the heck do you think you're doing?" she demanded as soon as we were in the parking lot. "Supporting your interests," I replied calmly. "Isn't that what good husbands do? You're trying to humiliate me." "I don't have to try, Sierra. You've done all the work yourself. I'm just making sure people know about it." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "You need to stop this. People are talking. My job is in jeopardy. My friends won't return my calls." "Consequences," I said, gently removing her hand from my arm. "You made choices, and now you get to live with the results. Welcome to the real world." I drove away, leaving her standing in the yoga studio parking lot, finally understanding that her actions had repercussions beyond her control. 3 months after the charity auction disaster, Sierra had become a pariah in our social circle. Her affair with Eli was old news by then, but the humiliating way it had been exposed had made her a cautionary tale that people whispered about at dinner parties and book clubs. She'd moved in with her sister temporarily, since Margot had cut off their friendship after being implicated in the cover-up. Eli had taken a job in another state, probably hoping to escape the gossip that followed him wherever he went in town. Sierra's career at Meridian PR was hanging by a thread, with her boss making it clear that her personal conduct had damaged the company's reputation. But I wasn't satisfied yet. Sierra had spent months making me feel like a fool, manipulating our daughter, and planning her exit strategy while pretending to be a loving wife. A little social embarrassment didn't seem like adequate payback for 15 years of lies. The opportunity for final justice came in the form of an invitation to Kevin Morrison's 40th birthday party. Kevin was Tabitha's younger brother, a successful investment banker who threw legendary parties at his estate outside town. The guest list included everyone who mattered in our social and professional circles. Exactly the audience I needed for the grand finale of my revenge campaign. Sierra had somehow managed to get herself invited, probably through some connection she was desperately trying to maintain. She showed up wearing a designer dress that she couldn't afford, and a smile that looked painted on, clearly hoping to rehabilitate her image through charm and careful social maneuvering. I arrived an hour after the party started, giving Sierra time to work the room and start feeling confident. Alex was with me. She'd turned 18 the month before and was legally old enough to witness what was about to happen. "Are you sure about this, Dad?" she asked as we walked up the circular driveway toward the mansion. "Your mother made her choices," I replied. "Now she gets to face the consequences in front of everyone who matters to her." The party was in full swing when we entered, with about 60 people scattered throughout the house and backyard. Sierra was holding court near the bar, telling some story that had her small audience laughing politely. She saw me enter, and her smile faltered for just a moment before she forced it back into place. I spent the first hour mingling, accepting condolences about my difficult divorce, and letting people know that I was doing well despite everything. Several people mentioned that they'd never trusted Sierra, that they'd always thought she was a little too ambitious or not quite right for me. It was amazing how quickly people rewrote history once someone fell from grace. At 10 p.m., Kevin called for everyone's attention to make a birthday toast. As people gathered in the main living room, I positioned myself near the front of the crowd, with Alex beside me and my phone in my hand. Before Kevin makes his speech, I announced, I'd like to share something special with everyone. A little birthday surprise that I think you'll all find illuminating. Kevin looked confused, but nodded for me to continue. Sierra, standing across the room near the fireplace, had gone pale. As most of you know, my wife Sierra and I are getting divorced. I began, my voice carrying clearly through the suddenly quiet room. What you might not know is the full extent of her extracurricular activities during our marriage. I held up my phone, which was connected to the room's sound system via Bluetooth. I've been collecting evidence for the divorce proceedings, and I thought Sierra's friends should know exactly who they've been socializing with. The first audio clip began playing. Sierra's voice, recorded during one of her phone calls with Eli, discussing how pathetic I was and how easy it had been to manipulate me. The room was dead silent as her words filled the space. He actually believes I'm working late, her recorded voice said with cruel laughter. I could tell him I was having lunch with the Pope and he'd believe it. Men are so stupid when they want to trust you. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd. Sierra tried to push through the people between us, but the crowd was packed too tightly. The second clip was even more damaging. Sierra discussing her long-term plan to divorce me once she'd found someone wealthier, describing our marriage as a stepping stone and our daughter as collateral damage that I'll deal with later. Nick, stop! Sierra screamed from across the room. This is private. Privacy? I called back. Like the privacy you gave me when you were screwing Eli in public places? Or the privacy you gave Alex when you made her lie for you? The third audio clip was the most devastating. Sierra talking to Margot about her plan to claim emotional harm in the divorce, to paint me as an unstable husband who'd driven her to seek comfort elsewhere. I'll say he was controlling and emotionally distant, her recorded voice explained. Maybe hint at some anger issues. Judges always side with the woman if you play it right. I'll get the house, half his business, and full custody. He'll be lucky to see Alex on weekends. The room erupted in shocked conversation. Several people were staring at Sierra with open disgust, while others were pulling out their phones to record the drama. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced over the noise, I present to you the real Sierra Barrow, cheater, liar, and master manipulator. She spent 15 years perfecting the art of deception, and I thought you should all know what you're dealing with. Sierra finally broke through the crowd, her face twisted with rage and humiliation. You bastard! You recorded private conversations? Actually, Alex spoke up from beside me, her young voice cutting through the chaos. I recorded most of them. Mom made me lie for her, cover for her affairs, and keep her secrets. She told me that Dad would be devastated if he knew the truth, so I had to protect him by staying quiet. The crowd turned to stare at my daughter, and I felt a surge of pride at her courage. But then I realized, Alex continued, that staying quiet was just enabling her to hurt him more. So I started recording her phone calls, her meetings with Eli, her conversations with Aunt Margot about the divorce plans. Everything. Sierra lunged toward Alex, but I stepped between them. Don't even think about it, I warned. She's my daughter, too, Sierra screamed. No, Alex said firmly. You stopped being my mother when you made me an accomplice to your lies. A real mother wouldn't put her child in that position. The crowd was completely silent now, watching the destruction of Sierra's life play out in real time. Kevin, the birthday boy, looked like he wanted to disappear. This is what happens, I announced to the room, when someone thinks they can manipulate and betray the people who love them without consequences. Sierra spent months planning to destroy my life, to take everything I'd worked for, and to turn my own daughter against me. She thought she was smarter than everyone else, that she could play whatever game she wanted without getting caught. I looked directly at Sierra, who was crying and shaking with rage. But here's the thing about games, sweetheart. Sometimes the other player is better at them than you are. Sierra made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. You don't understand, she called out to the crowd. He's been stalking me, harassing me, trying to destroy my life because he can't accept that I don't love him anymore. The room waited to see how I'd respond to this final manipulation. I smiled and pulled out one more piece of evidence, a printed email chain between Sierra and a private investigator she'd hired to dig up dirt on me for the divorce proceedings. "This is from last month," I announced, reading from the papers. "Sierra hired a PI to investigate me, hoping to find evidence of infidelity, financial impropriety, or anything else she could use against me in court. The investigator's report concluded, and I quote, 'Subject appears to be exactly what he claims to be, a faithful husband and devoted father with no apparent secrets or misconduct.'" I looked up at Sierra, whose face had gone ashen. "The PI recommended that you abandon your strategy of character assassination because, in his professional opinion, I was boringly honest and pathologically loyal to my family." The final nail in the coffin was a recording of Sierra's reaction to the PI's report. Then we'll have to manufacture something. Plant evidence, create witnesses, whatever it takes. I'm not walking away from 15 years of marriage with nothing. The crowd's shocked silence turned to open hostility towards Sierra. Several people were shaking their heads in disgust, while others were already heading for the exits, probably eager to spread the story throughout town. "And that," I concluded, "is the woman some of you thought was the victim in our divorce. Someone who was willing to frame an innocent man, manipulate the legal system, and destroy her own family to get what she wanted." Sierra collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. The party was effectively over. People were leaving in groups, whispering excitedly about what they'd witnessed. Alex and I walked toward the exit, but I paused next to Sierra's chair. "You wanted to play games," I said quietly, so only she could hear. "You wanted to see who was smarter, who could manipulate better, who could destroy the other person more completely. Congratulations, you found out." I straightened up and looked around the nearly empty room. "Oh, and Sierra, the divorce papers will be served tomorrow morning. You'll find that your lawyer has already dropped you as a client. Apparently, the audio recordings of you discussing perjury and evidence tampering made him uncomfortable about representing you." Sierra looked up at me with pure hatred. "You've destroyed everything." "No," I replied calmly. "You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone knew about it." Alex and I walked out of the mansion together, leaving Sierra alone with the wreckage of her carefully constructed lies and the reputation she'd spent years building. As we drove home, Alex was quiet for several minutes before speaking. "Do you think we went too far?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. Your mother spent months planning to destroy my life, take everything I'd worked for, and turn you against me. She was willing to commit perjury, manufacture evidence, and manipulate the legal system to get what she wanted. She made you an accomplice to her deceptions and taught you that betrayal was acceptable as long as you didn't get caught. I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. "She didn't just cheat on me, Alex. She tried to destroy me completely, and she was willing to sacrifice you to do it. What we did tonight was justice." Alex nodded slowly. "She's never going to forgive us." "I don't want her forgiveness," I replied. "I want her to understand that actions have consequences and that some games have winners and losers. Tonight, she lost." The next morning, the divorce papers were served as promised. Sierra's lawyer had indeed dropped her, and she was forced to represent herself in court. The audio recordings and other evidence I'd collected made the proceedings swift and decisive. I got the house, the business, and primary custody of Alex. Sierra got exactly what she'd earned through 15 years of lies and betrayal. Nothing. 6 months later, she moved to another state, probably hoping to start over somewhere that her reputation hadn't preceded her. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was working as a receptionist at a small company, having been blacklisted from PR work after word spread about her conduct. Alex thrived in her senior year of high school, no longer burdened with keeping her mother's secrets. She got accepted to her first choice college with a full scholarship, and we spent her last months at home building the kind of honest relationship that Sierra's lies had made impossible. As for me, I learned that revenge, when properly planned and executed, can be more satisfying than forgiveness. Sierra had gambled that she could manipulate and betray the people who loved her without facing any real consequences. She'd been wrong. Sometimes the underdog wins not through luck or chance, but through patience, intelligence, and the willingness to play the game better than the people who started it.